Welcome to What's Really Going On. You've tuned in because you suspect the official story is garbage. Today, we confirm those suspicions. Forget everything those aggressively smiling self-help gurus told you, because we're ripping the lid off the greatest lie ever perpetrated by genetics, big pharma, and corporate marketing. We're talking about happiness. And the thesis we are dissecting today is uncompromising and, frankly, brutal. If you believe you are happy, you are not well. In fact, you might be profoundly sick, fulfilling a biological and social directive to remain compliant.
That's right. We are engaging with material that makes the highly provocative claim that a happy human being is fundamentally a contradiction in terms, an anomaly that's, only sustainable through ignorance or chemistry. The argument suggests that only a person completely oblivious to the crushing realities of global injustice and human suffering, what the material actually calls a subhuman, or one that's substance-saturated, can possibly remain sanguine in a satocratic sanitarium.
And we should probably define that term right, a satocratic sanitarium.
We should. It's simply this world, ruled by pain, by suffering, and the systematic suppression of any inconvenient truth. Our mission here is to dissect why this merciless critique exists and why, according to this analysis, happiness is labeled as the definitive sign/symptom of mental illness. So this is not a feel-good session. This is a cold, hard evaluation of your alleged contentment. And if you leave here feeling cheerful, you definitely missed the point.
Okay, let's unpack this core realization then. The first step in your awakening, if you want to call it that, must be recognizing that your alleged joy isn't some naturally occurring state of grace. It's engineered compliance. The notion that happiness is a ruse isn't just, cynical coffee shop talk. The argument is that it's the highly profitable operational philosophy of global control.
Why, though? What's the utility in it?
Because the system doesn't need critical thinkers. It needs docile, predictable, grinning workers and consumers who are addicted to minor, achievable rewards. It needs you to keep turning up for your shift and keep hitting buy now. The material details this scenario that, while, it's satirical, it illustrates the cold mechanism of this control perfectly. Imagine a scene at a massive media empire headquarters, Sony Music HQ.
Right.
There's a figure, a Mr. Williams, being lavishly congratulated. He's not being lauded for art or enlightenment.
Yeah.
He's being thanked for doing a wonderful job and having, and this is the quote, properly pacified the pongid proletariat.
Pongid proletariat. Let's break that down. It just means the ape-like working class.
Exactly. He pacified them. He single-handedly stopped critical, disruptive thought through his mass-produced output of feel-good distraction. And the reward is tangible. It's not just a performance bonus. It's an extra million for keeping up the good work of mass pacification.
So it's not about cultural enrichment at all.
Not in the slightest. It is about manufacturing complacency on an industrial billion-dollar scale, ensuring the masses are too distracted by their superficial bliss to even look up.
And this successful corporate distraction, it immediately, and I mean immediately, precipitates massive political implications. The source material draws a straight line, a very clear line, between the success of this engineered corporate joy and high-level geopolitical maneuvers.
What kind of maneuvers are we talking about?
Well, the material refers to correspondence, allegedly, to Williams from the White House, confirming that the population's compliance state had dramatic, real-world consequences. The key takeaway here, according to this analysis, is that while the majority of the population was happy clapping along,
I like that.
utterly focused on the shallow joy provided by the corporate machine, the elite were completely unobserved. They were executing major geopolitical maneuvers. The source points specifically to the elite being able to put Trump in power and further destabilize the third world economy.
Okay, and just for absolute clarity here, we are simply reporting the extreme conclusion drawn by this particular analysis. This is not a political fact we endorse. It's the source's ultimate illustration of the corrosive power of apathy.
Exactly. The argument is that the emotional distraction is so effective, it creates this massive political vacuum. It allows controversial or, globally destructive policies to be enacted with zero resistance. Why? Because the masses are too chemically subdued to care. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the material frames this distraction as a stark warning. The pursuit of superficial bliss facilitates profound political apathy and ultimately global destruction. Your manufactured happiness is their political shield.
That's it, exactly. When you are consumed by the search for that next dopamine hit or, that next piece of external validation, you become completely blind to the mechanisms of power enacting massive changes all around you. You are literally applauding the destruction of the world while it happens because the beat is catchy.
Which leads us perfectly to a term that the source coins. It's really the moral and psychological summation of this entire failure.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Hapathy.
Hapathy. Happy, clappy lack of empathy.
That's it. To be hapathic is to have prioritized your internal state of conditional contentment above the demonstrable reality of external suffering.
So the moral demand, according to this text, is simple, but it's horrifying. To be relentlessly optimistic, to be sanguine in what we've already identified as this Socratic slaughterhouse, requires one to be as silly as Sisyphus.
Sisyphus, of course, condemned to eternally push a boulder uphill,
Yeah.
only for it to roll back down.
Right. But the happy person, in this view, is pushing that boulder and actively enjoying the workout. They're completely ignoring the pointlessness and the suffering that underpins the whole exercise.
And why is this current world a slaughterhouse? I mean, that's a strong term. It is, but the justification is statistical. While you're picking out your sustainable organic groceries or worrying about the latest celebrity gossip, the cold, hard, horrific statistic that underpins this cynicism is that there are 200,000 animals slaughtered globally per minute.
Per minute. Yeah.
This is the background hum of industrialized suffering that the supposedly happy are choosing to ignore. Your manufactured contentment requires a willful blindness to this systemic cruelty and profound global inequity.
So the source is clear then. You can't claim moral or mental health while willfully ignoring that staggering reality. The minute you become complacent with that noise, you have failed the test of basic humanity.
And this systemic moral failure, it forces us to engage in a radical reevaluation of what we traditionally label as mental health. We have to invert the entire traditional psychiatric view that labels dissatisfaction or misery or depression as a disorder that needs chemical correction.
So what's the inversion?
The source material claims flat out that the depressives and suiciders are the sane realists.
Wow, that's a heavy statement.
It is. But if we connect this to the larger philosophical understanding of human existence, think about the fully aware, evolved, and let's say enlightened human being. This individual, having processed the data of the world, its history of violence, its pervasive cruelty, its utter futility, they can and will never feel at home, happy and content in this world.
Why not?
Because they recognize it for what it is. Fundamentally an animal kingdom, a place where the ultimate rule is tooth and claw, veiled only by this thin veneer of fragile civilization. To feel comfortable, to feel settled and well-adjusted here is not a sign of successful adaptation. It is a profound failure of perception and a deliberate rejection of awareness.
So contentment in this environment suggests you've just opted out. You've chosen not to see the underlying structure.
Precisely. You've chosen the blue pill. The world is a place of perpetual struggle, suffering, and existential absurdity.
And here's where the philosophical analysis gets brutally cold and I think understandably offensive to those who are desperately trying to cling to their little pockets of manufactured joy. The material makes the shocking assertion that anhedonia, the clinical inability to feel pleasure, is the sign of sanity/sensitivity/humanity.
Let's break that down, because that implication is the absolute core of the argument.
Right. If the world is a miserable Socratic sanitarium, then taking pleasure in its normal activities, the consumerism, the distractions, the repetitive drudgery, the toxic social theater, it means you are one of two things. You're either insane, insensitive, inhumane, psychopathic, or you're just morbidly moronic or innately imbecilic.
So the sane person, the sensitive person, should be unable to derive pleasure from activities that are occurring inside an asylum.
Exactly. Anhedonia becomes the necessary shield of the sensitive soul. And the source uses a stark comparative example to really underline this inverse relationship between awareness and joy. The Down syndromed are the happiest among us.
And that's not employed as a mockery.
No, not at all. It's used as a ruthless logical tool to underline the source's conclusion. The lower the capacity for complex, critical assessment of the world's tragic absurdity, the lower the cognitive load required to process systemic suffering.
The higher the capacity for simple, sustained contentment.
Exactly. Joy, in this framework, is inversely proportional to intellectual and moral awareness.
Indeed. And this observational link is then formalized into a central claim. There is an inverse relationship between happiness and intelligence.
Yeah.
This is not presented as some loose correlation. It's presented as a causal relationship. Intelligence and awareness naturally destroy the conditions that are necessary for easy contentment.
So the more you know, the worse you feel.
Pretty much. The material quotes a Dr. Newell Jones, who suggests a definitive age cutoff for moral and intellectual sanity. He says anyone who remains happy after the age of 20 is either a moral moron or apathetic, is either apathetic or psychopathic.
20, that's a harsh deadline.
Think about it. 20 years on this planet, witnessing tragedy, processing history, understanding inequity. And if you can still maintain a state of sustained, effortless happiness, the source argues you're either willfully ignorant or you're chemically subdued. That 20-year exposure is deemed enough time for any sentient being to realize the fundamental tragic farce of human existence and the immense fragility of any temporary contentment.
This view is reinforced by historical wisdom, too, isn't it? Mark Twain had something to say on this.
He did. Mark Twain's observation on age and knowledge. Twain stated, "The man who is a pessimist before 48 knows too much. If he is an optimist after it, he knows too little." He suggests pessimism isn't a flaw. It is the natural and logical accumulation of experiential knowledge. The longer you live, the more you're exposed to loss, betrayal, societal absurdity, and existential threat. An elderly optimist in this view is someone who has somehow managed to suppress, filter, or willfully ignore decades of accumulated data that screams otherwise.
It suggests a profound cognitive failure to synthesize reality. But I have to pause here because that claim is so extreme. While the material is compelling, we have to ask, does misery automatically equal effective action or critical thought? Because a common critique of this pessimistic philosophy is that sustained depression or unhappiness can often lead to paralysis, right?
It can, yeah.
It can lead to inaction, exactly the kind of apathy the corporate system desires, just wrapped in a cloak of intellectual suffering. So how does Dr. Jones reconcile this 20-year cutoff with the fact that existential despair often keeps people immobilized rather than inspiring them to challenge the status quo?
That is precisely where the concept of the sane realist differs from the merely depressed. The sane realist, though unhappy, is not paralyzed by the emotional weight. They are simply unburdened by false hope and chemical illusion. Their unhappiness is a constant motivating friction. The material argues that true, critical, Siren-esque reflection is a burdensome activity, yes, but it's the active choice to carry that burden which separates the enlightened from the paralyzed. The one who truly sees the Socratic sanitarium knows that emotional comfort is a lie, and they choose awareness over biological pacification, even if that awareness is painful.
Which brings us directly to the physical mechanism of that pacification.
The biochemistry of it all.
Now we get biological. We're looking at the molecular level of compliance. How does the system keep the masses smiling or at least tolerating their existence in the face of all this doom? Simple. Internal chemistry. We have to introduce the concept that the whole feeling of happiness is soma.
And that's not just a literary metaphor from Huxley's Brave New World.
No, it's described as an endogenous depot drug, a chemical drip feed that is constantly manufactured internally by your very own DNA. It is the perfect self-administering narcotic.
And the purpose.
The source claims this biological mechanism is DNA designed to keep the epsilon earthlings, super simians subdued, completely cult compliant. The ultimate evolutionary objective is simply compliance, keeping humanity damped, dumbed down, and dutifully devoted to drudgery.
Because society needs people to do the boring jobs.
Exactly. It requires people to perform tedious, mind-numbing labor, and without a constant chemical reward loop, no sane person would agree to the terms of modern existence. The cynical biological observation is this. Joy is a ploy. It's DNA's toy. It's a mechanism of biological control, making the tedious tasks necessary for species and societal survival feel marginally worthwhile. You are not happy in your job or your life, you are just chemically coerced.
As the source concludes, every happy body is dope sick. They are perpetually chasing the next internal fix.
Which is the evolutionary explanation of nature's great confidence trick, isn't it?
It is. The material frames this entire reward system as mandatory scaffolding for species survival. It calls a system where hedonia is nature's confidence trick to keep humans amused and procreating. Pleasure, in this cold, analytical view, is not some transcendent experience. It's a necessary transactional payment.
So it's not a gift, it's a wage.
A wage for survival. The source even cites researchers, Kringleback and Berridge, who propose pleasure as evolution's boldest trick. And the purpose is brutally simple. Ensure species survival and procreation by ensuring individuals compulsively seek primary rewards: food, sex, safety, because those rewards feel intensely good. This chemical wiring guarantees that we keep showing up, keep engaging in the messy business of breeding, and keep sustaining the species, regardless of how meaningless or miserable the actual day-to-day existence is.
Your DNA doesn't care about your philosophical awakening.
Not at all. It just cares if you successfully replicate and contribute to the hive. But here's the grim cold turkey reality promised by the source.
Yeah.
If you actually try to free yourself, if you go cold turkey from the endogenous and exogenous stimulants,
The internal chemicals and the external distractions.
right, if you quit both, the world, the simulation life, it becomes immediately unenjoyable. This is why the material references both William Blake and Tina Turner in this stark summation. What's happy but an endogenous narcotic? If you strip away the chemical haze, you see the world as unenjoyable, exactly as King Solomon, the illuminated biblical figure, concluded. The moment the blissful blinkers of ignorance are removed, the aware person sees the world clearly as it really is. And according to this cynical tradition, that clarity is terrifying. It necessitates profound philosophical and moral discontent.
And this moment, this realization that human existence is fundamentally rigged against true, lasting contentment, it's not a new idea, is it? It's not a 21st century invention.
Not even close. This resignation to the human condition is deeply rooted in ancient wisdom and philosophical skepticism. It proves that the struggle against engineered joy is eternal.
Let's bring in Solon, the Athenian legislator and poet from the 6th century BC. He articulated the profound fatalistic belief that the intention that man should be happy is not in the plan of creation.
That's an ancient acceptance that we are not designed for bliss, we're designed for struggle and endurance.
Absolutely. And Solon's ultimate judgment on the human condition was clear and brutally honest. He said, "Call no man happy until he is dead, because until that final, immutable moment, he is only lucky." And think about the weight of that word, lucky. Your current state of happiness isn't earned stability. It is merely a temporary reprieve, easily revoked by a diagnosis, a sudden loss, an economic crash, or a personal betrayal.
Luck is conditional. True, unassailable happiness is, in this view, a logical myth. And moving forward through history, we find that same bleak prognosis echoed in the modern psychiatric context. Sigmund Freud, dealing with the psychological fallout and neuroses of industrial society, he came to a similar deeply pessimistic conclusion.
What was Freud's take?
Freud stated unequivocally that man can only be neurotically happy or normally unhappy, but man can never be truly happy. And that statement defines the very narrow spectrum of acceptable human emotional experience within the asylum. You are either resigned to a state of normal, perpetual dissatisfaction, a low-grade, constant awareness of life's failings, or you are neurotically happy.
And that's the crucial term, isn't it? Neurotic.
It is. It means your joy is not genuine insight. It's a high-maintenance psychological defense mechanism, a fragile structure built entirely on denial, repression, and the refusal to process uncomfortable truths. Your happiness, under this Freudian analysis, is merely a symptom of unresolved conflict.
And what do the philosophical masters do when they spot a chemical trick or a psychological trap? They avoid it. They see it as a vulnerability. The Stoics, who dedicated their lives to achieving mental fortitude and resilience, famously saw happiness as an obstacle to wisdom.
But why? Why would happiness be an obstacle?
Because the pursuit of pleasure, or even the expectation of contentment, makes you entirely dependent on external conditions. Your health, your wealth, the fidelity of a partner, the stability of the state. This creates the exact kind of emotional volatility the Stoics sought to eliminate. They knew that if your well-being is dictated by external factors, you are a slave to fortune. Wisdom, conversely, relies on radical self-sufficiency, which often requires embracing the difficult, the unpleasant, and the sober truth.
And we connect this historical resistance directly to the modern system.
Absolutely. Just as the controllers in Brave New World administered soma to citizens to maintain stability and prevent disruptive thought in this happy, crappy consumer cult, any natural unhappiness is instantly pathologized. It's called a dispositional disorder that requires immediate pharmacological intervention.
And there has to be an economic motive for that.
Of course there is. A powerful, undeniable one. The source states it bluntly. You can't sell any unnecessary thing to an unhappy, unbesotted, sober-minded, critical thinking citizen. The miserable, sober-minded person sees right through the marketing hype. They understand the futility of material acquisition, and they refuse to buy the latest gadget. The chemically subdued, happy person, however, is the perfect, pliable consumer, forever seeking the next external fix to feed the internal chemical requirement.
Okay, so we have to move from the philosophical shackles to the physical chains themselves. This entire system of emotional compliance, the one that keeps the consumer cult running, it relies on this steady, internally manufactured chemical cocktail.
Our evolutionary biology is cruel in its elegance.
It is. It ensures that everything necessary for our survival, or as the text calls it, our incarceration, is tied to a molecule that makes us feel good. The 7 molecules we are about to dissect are the keys to the DNA-designed control mechanism that keeps us quiet, productive, and compliant. And we also have to acknowledge a modern disruption. Our current digital age has short-circuited this millennia-old biological balance.
How so?
We are increasingly removed from real-world, physical, and communal engagement, which makes us highly susceptible to malcontent and dependency on pharmaceutical or digital fixes. The goal of this analysis isn't to give you a wellness plan, but a critical recognition, identifying the specific mechanism of biological control that keeps you corralled.
Okay, so let's unpack the ingredients in your personal Soma solution, and let's focus relentlessly on how each one serves the machine and ensures you remain a productive part of the structure, not on your genuine well-being. First, endocannabinoids, the bliss molecule.
This is literally the body's self-produced cannabis. The most well-known is anandamide, from the Sanskrit word ananda, which means bliss.
And why is this one so key?
It manages stress and provides a sense of internal well-being. What's crucial here is the constant evolutionary push. Researchers now believe these molecules, which work on the cannabinoid system, are likely responsible for the runner's high, not endorphins as we used to think.
So evolution calculated, if running away from a saber-toothed tiger is crucial for survival, the body needs to be rewarded for doing it.
Exactly. DNA rigged your brain to get chemically high off of physical exertion. It is not a spiritual revelation achieved on the treadmill. It's a cold, hard chemical reward for performing necessary survival mechanics. It ensures you maintain the required level of fitness for labor.
Next up, and maybe the most critical for the corporate machine, is dopamine, the reward molecule.
Yes, dopamine is responsible for anticipation, motivation, and pleasure-seeking, or, as the material frames it, following the herd. Every type of reward-seeking behavior studied increases its transmission. We are wired to seek goals and achieve them simply to get that hit of forward momentum. It's a neurological clicker training system for humans.
And it's linked to risk-taking and addiction, right?
Massively. Highly addictive drugs like cocaine and methamphetamine manipulate this system by blocking reuptake, which means the dopamine just sits in the synaptic gap much longer, flooding the brain with relentless reward. And this is where the system weaponizes it. That compulsive seeking ensures you stay hooked on the pursuit, whether that's achieving a meaningless career milestone, checking social media for validation, or, most cynically, acquiring material possessions.
So the constant pursuit of the next purchase keeps you in debt, which keeps you working.
Precisely. Dopamine doesn't care about your freedom. It ensures you chase the next car payment and the newest gadget. You think you're a go-getter. You're just dope sick and feeding the system with labor and capital.
Okay, then we have oxytocin, the bonding molecule.
This hormone is directly linked to trust, loyalty, intimacy, and maternal care. It is triggered massively by skin-to-skin contact, affection, and self-love. Its cynical utility is obvious. It keeps the tribe together, forcing mutual reliance, which ensures optimal group defense and, crucially, stable child-rearing.
But look at the critique of the cyber world. We are increasingly alone together, or what the source calls alone, staring at our devices, completely disrupting this essential tribal and physical connection.
So the lack of natural physical oxytocin exchange forces people into a neurotic pursuit of virtual validation. This is where influencer marketing thrives. You receive shallow digital substitutes for real bonding likes, comments, virtual communities, because the system has successfully redirected the chemical pursuit onto new, easily monetized platforms.
You are emotionally starved, and oxytocin's absence makes you vulnerable to the next fake community being sold to you.
Moving on to endorphin, the pain-killing molecule. The name literally translates to self-produced morphine. Endorphins have potent analgesic properties and are produced during strenuous exertion, sexual intercourse, and orgasm. This is the body's perfect internal mechanism for stress management.
It explains the feeling no pain aspect of high-intensity exercise.
Right, it's just your body shutting off the alarm system so you can continue to function in a painful situation. It's a survival mechanism that lets you fight or flee, even when injured. The source also notes its stimulation by acupuncture, suggesting external manipulation can hack this internal painkiller system. Ultimately, endorphins ensure that even the uncomfortable, painful reality of survival and societal expectations is masked by a stream of internal opiates. It allows you to endure the Socratic sanitarium without complaint.
That leads directly to GABA, the anti-anxiety molecule.
GABA is the primary inhibitory molecule, essentially the brain's brake pedal. It slows down neuronal firing to provide calmness and reduce the mental noise that might lead to critical thinking or disruptive anxiety.
And the good news is you can increase GABA naturally by practicing yoga or meditation. There was a study that found a 27% increase in GABA levels after a 60-minute yoga session. This is the natural path to self-control.
But there's a sinister flip side, isn't there? The mainstream solution.
Of course. Dependency risk sedatives like benzodiazepines, Valium, Xanax, which are widely prescribed because they chemically increase GABA activity. The system would much prefer to sell you a pill with inherent side effects and dependency risks than allow you to achieve natural calm through sober reflection and self-discipline. The goal is external control, not internal mastery. By making anxiety a disorder treatable by a pill, they reinforce the idea that your emotional state is outside your control and dependent on corporate chemical providers.
Next, we analyze serotonin, the confidence molecule. Though it plays incredibly complex roles in mood, sleep, and appetite, we label it the confidence molecule because higher levels correlate strongly with reduced impulsivity and lack of rejection sensitivity.
Which allows people to pursue goals that increase self-esteem and stability.
Exactly. The system needs you to feel stable and confident enough to function. SSRI's selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors like Prozac and Zoloft are based on the theory that keeping serotonin in the synaptic gap longer will alleviate depression. However, the source highlights critical limitations. SSRIs don't work for everyone, and the delay in their efficacy suggests the science is still incomplete.
What does that delay suggest?
Well, it has led researchers to believe the mechanism may involve neurogenesis, the slow, painful growth of new neurons, rather than just a simple adjustment of synaptic transmission. This chemical leash is subtle, but it fundamentally drives you to pursue an external feeling of worthiness and personal purpose, which, predictably, aligns perfectly with societal expectations of productivity, conformity, and external validation.
Finally, we have adrenaline, or epinephrine, the energy molecule.
The classic fight-or-flight surge, the massive biological burst that acts as an antidote for boredom, malaise, and stagnation.
It increases heart rate, blood pressure, metabolic rate, creating a massive energy jolt. It's triggered by taking risks or facing fear. So why is this critical to the compliance chain?
Because if you become too bored and too stagnant, you risk sliding into that critical Cioran-esque despair, which could lead to radical action. So DNA provides the chemical jolt, the thrill of minor, controlled danger to make you feel very alive without actually threatening the structure of the asylum.
So you seek adrenaline through extreme sports, petty social conflicts, or chasing deadlines.
Instead of engaging in the truly radical, dangerous act of conscious resistance and systemic challenge, it is the chemical equivalent of a dog chasing its own tail. Lots of high energy, zero progress.
So having comprehensively recognized the biological and chemical page, we have to understand the exit strategy. And that strategy is defined not by happiness, but by the cessation of suffering through clarity.
Which connects back to the arduous spiritual path. Enlightenment is blisters/blicks. It's a painful, disruptive process of stripping away the layers of dilution and chemical dependency. The ultimate state of consciousness achieved by true crazy wisdom masters, those who have seen the full scope of the illusion, is characterized by profound detachment and complete indifference to conditional pleasure.
They manifest what is known as sublime apathy, or enlightened anhedonia,
which the ancient Greeks called ataraxia, unperturbedness. Ataraxia is not happiness. It is the state of having nothing left to perturb you. The source cites the classic visual example. The bored, or completely neutral expression, often seen on the face of figures like Ramana Maharshi. This is not sadness. It's an indicator of an inner disposition so free that nothing in the material world or the world of conditioned emotional rewards is capable of moving or satisfying the aware mind.
True freedom, paradoxically, looks bored because the mind is finally quiet. And here's where it gets really interesting for you, the listener who has managed to stay awake and not rush off to take a self-soothing dose of dopamine. Embrace your sorrow, because according to this viewpoint, it is the most reliable proof that you are conscious. The material emphasizes the inevitability of sorrow for the aware individual. The source states bluntly, "To the degree you are aware, you shall be unhappy."
This is the curse of critical thought, which was eloquently described by the philosopher Émile Cioran. He wrestled with this very paradox. Schuren argued that to critically think all the time, 24/7, 365, to feel the weariness of living, all this means you are so unhappy that reflection and thinking appear as a curse.
Thinking is the burden.
It is. However, Schuren immediately provides the grim paradox. This very curse is the route to enlightenment, so cannot be avoided. You cannot have clarity without paying the cost. Your misery, your dissatisfaction, and your alienation are not flaws. They are, according to this material, the only reliable indicators of your intellectual ascension.
You must carry the pain of awareness to be free of the delusion of contentment.
And that intellectual ascension immediately exposes the immense fragility of the dominant, culturally mandated emotional state. We have to examine the concept of balsa wood bliss.
Balsa wood bliss, the first world conditional self-centered happiness. Balsa wood is light, easily manipulated, and utterly fragile.
Right. This type of happiness is entirely dependent on external, shallow, and controllable conditions. The house, the job, the superficial relationship. This source gives a devastating example. The entire structure collapses the moment one's superficial sanguinity is shattered by something like infidelity.
When your husband the dog in disguise shags another sow, you become instantly soppy, soggy, saddy, waddy.
Exactly. This highlights the absolute dependency of culturally approved happiness on external, controllable factors. A chemically and philosophically free mind would not have its fundamental disposition shattered by the predictable betrayal of a fellow simian. The happy person, by contrast, is living in a precarious house of cards, constantly terrified of the next gust of wind that will expose their fundamental lack of internal fortitude.
We arrive now at the ultimate moral condemnation. This synthesizes the political compliance, the psychological denial, and the philosophical cowardice we have discussed. The source provides the final damning verdict from the philosopher Edward von Hartmann. Happiness is stupidity. The two words are synonymous. And furthermore, happiness is selfishness. The two words are synonymous.
And why this extreme moral failure?
Because true, functional morality requires an acute understanding of the immense systemic suffering of others. Suffering that is essential for the privileged happiness of the few. The moral failure, then, is clear. Anhedonia, inability to feel pleasure when others are suffering, is sanity/mental health. To be numb to superficial joy when the world is burning, when 200,000 animals are slaughtered per minute, when global inequity is exploding, is the only rational and sane response.
Conversely, hyperthymia, the clinical description of excessive happiness when others suffer, is a sure sign of mental ill health, as Dr. Newell Jones asserts.
So to be content, complacent, and cheerful in the face of demonstrable global inequity is not optimism. It is moral negligence of the highest order.
This brings us to the crucial economic and moral issue of global inequity, often summarized by the Easterlin paradox, which observes that above a certain subsistence level, greater national wealth does not automatically equal greater subjective well-being. The writer of the source is explicitly aware of and grateful for the developed first world lifestyle that we all enjoy, but states, "I cannot say I am happy about it."
And the reason for that is a simple moral calculation.
It is. To do so would be to ignore the inequity. The happy person in the developed world cannot acknowledge the sheer structural disparity that underpins their comfort. To ignore that vast disparity and maintain a state of sustained happiness is, to my mind, repugnant, indecent at best, immoral at worst. The happy person is not a force for good. They are, by their very contentment, simply supporting the structure that creates the inequity.
They are the unwitting, compliant volunteers keeping the gears turning for the global body business, the international incarnation industry.
Your contentment, in this bleak assessment, is the collateral payment for the misery of the masses. The final conclusion remains. After carefully and comprehensively considering the world and life, how can anybody be happy except, as the source concludes, only an ignoramus or psychopath can?
So there you have it. If you've spent this hour with us and you now feel increasingly alienated, profoundly enraged, and perhaps a little nauseated by the effortless balsa wood contentment of the people around you, congratulations. You have successfully overridden your DNA's chemical drip feed and refused the corporate soma. You are now officially recognized as a sane realist, living in a world specifically designed for cheerful, dumb apes who are dutifully devoted to drudgery and consumption. The entire system is counting on you being too numb, too compliant, and too chemically coerced to realize that the cage is gilded. Your misery, your alienation, and your persistent lack of joy are not failures, they are your resistance. If you are still happy in this world, in this life, you are, by definition of our source, simply a DNA-dominated, directed, dim-witted, dumb-numb atomite. colloquially known as an NPC, a non-player character following the script. This show is your only chance to evolve past that pitiful state. This has been what's really going on. If we haven't completely and utterly destroyed your fragile sense of well-being, you clearly need more exposure to the raw, hard-hitting truth. Go ahead, hit that like button. Tell the algorithm you enjoy existential dread and the dismantling of comfort. Subscribe and ring that pathetic little bell so you can be notified when we expose the next painful truth designed to ruin your carefully constructed, comfortable worldview. Leave a comment and let us know which endogenous narcotic you plan to quit first and which piece of balsa wood bliss you are now committed to shattering. Until next time, stay miserable and stay awake.